So, welcome back. This is visible. Sit here because the camera follows me. I'm here. All right. So today is actually like our first day in moving in the direction of studying relationships, running regressions, and so on. How have we gotten here so far, right? So we've had a couple, three lectures actually, where we've been preparing to this point. Right? So for us to do analysis, for us to do any analysis, we must have data. And I could come in here and just come in with data and then just start running analysis. But we actually spent a little bit of time talking about how to build data and then how to ensure that that data set is in fact healthy for you to use. Right? So it starts with us building data. The story of building data was our previous class where we start with an idea of what we want to study, right? A concept, if you will. And we spend some time thinking about that concept and what that concept looks like in the real world. And we start taking steps towards translating that concept into a metric, into a measure, into a variable. Right, so that's what we talked about in the previous class, right? We had the example of efficiency, legislator, remember that? And we started about a conversation of what does an efficient legislator look like? And we talked about this idea, this person that's working really hard and trying to pass these bills. And then as we started moving towards an actual metric of efficiency, one that would capture the idea of efficiency, we started hitting some snags, right? We started saying, oh, well, it doesn't really capture what we're looking for. What if we do this? Okay, that takes us in a better direction, but we're still not there. And we kept tweaking and tweaking until we walked away with a metric. That metric was limited in the sense that it does not capture the entire notion of efficiency, right? So the example that I gave you was this idea of even if we were to follow all the steps that I suggested to you, somebody that comes in and passes legislation that is really meaningful, that's really important for their community, they do that with the support of the opposition, right? All of these things seem to suggest that this is a good, effective legislator. This person is in touch with their community, right? That's the stuff that, like, they're representing their community. They're they're passing important legislation, so they have a sense of focus. They're working with the opposition, so that captures this notion of the ability to work with other people that are different. So all of these things are key elements, key parts of efficiency. And then the metric seems to suggest that we're going in the right direction. And then I ended up by pointing out, well, what if this person does all of that but passes a single bill? Like the example I gave you was that person either uh, pushing for abortion or pushing to eliminate abortion or to expand abortion, depending on how you feel about it. I just wanted to give you options for you to incorporate your own background into it and think about the idea of efficiency, given that that person does all of the things that I mentioned and yet only passes one bill. So that's an example of just how tricky it is, right? Even if we follow all the steps that the metric suggests, we could still end up with somebody that's inefficient. I mean, if a person is there for 4 years and he passes one bill, it's hardly an efficient person. So in there, in this whole exercise, which by the way, is that the homework you had questions about? Or no? Okay, so.
The second one is not due until Friday.
That's
This is February
I'm not losing. I'm not losing any sleep over.
4th.
Yeah,
I-
No, I told you not to. I told you not. Sleep is very important. You should not lose sleep over any sleep. So in there is the story of building a data set. Like, we still haven't done, and we're nowhere near being able to run an analysis, but it's an important thing. So do we understand this idea? Our starting point. You have any questions about that you need clarification? So raise your hands. You're like, for your opinion for 1 second. 1 second. But put a pin on what we're talking about and just answer me this. Anybody here a Trump supporter? Which, by the way, it's completely fine if you are. Nobody here has like a little bit of sympathy for him? Come on. He's not the devil.
It's okay.
Hey, devil. So my question to you, have you noticed how President Biden managed to push Judge Breyer out, right? Was anybody offended by that? That why?
Because like what happened with RBC, had she stepped down prior, maybe she would have died during a Republican presidency and like lost a seat. So instead of Breyer being like kicking the bucket, and then, there'd be a Republican next term, instead he's stepping down.
So that bothers you?
No, it doesn't bother.
Okay, that bothers you?
It doesn't bother, it doesn't really bother me. I understand why it was done, but I think nobody should have to be asked to leave a position if they're doing a good job. They're still doing the job that you need them to do.
Look what a great point. It goes right back to what we're talking about. Is he doing a good job?
Ain't just doing that, so in my opinion, that was his.
So was Judge Ginsburg, was she doing a good job?
I would like to answer you. No one in this room can answer these questions because no one is an attorney.
No. That's not the point. That we can't answer those questions. I mean, we can't answer questions like, if you died on the job, I mean, what does it do? What does it mean to perform well in the job? I mean, if you died on the job, you can't really perform on the job, right?
So, right.
So then she wasn't doing a good job. I mean, she should. It's just a very complicated point. Because there is some offensiveness to that, but there isn't as well. It's just that President Trump did that with Scalia. And today I read 100 articles from enraged Republicans saying, how dare Biden do that? He is violating the sanctity of the Supreme Court. Trump would never dream of do that.
Yes, he would.
He did it. And I thought when he did it, you know what? I hate Trump more than anybody in this room. And when he did it, I was like, touche, sir. Good for you. That he did it. I mean, that was a very smart thing to do. but that's a political science class. I was just interested. I just wanted to see if somebody in here was more enraged than I was. This whole thing, and how Republicans are really mad. That's Chris.
I don't think that there is an age to retire for a judge, and the problem is not with the judges. Problem is with the system.
I beg to differ. There is an age to retire. I mean, if you're at 93, yeah, I don't know what that age is, but you're past it.
It's like being a physician also, the same thing. There is no age for retirement. There is a suggested age for retirement, but you can work until you age 135.
Yeah, and then you're doing a surgery and you pass out on top of the person that you're doing the surgery.
That's my point. That is my point.
And then it's like, oh, it's a twofer today.
But here is the other thing, scary things that I would like to tell you.
No, let's not, I shouldn't have asked this question. I just wanted to get a quick, let's go back to numbers.
Skip slides.
I did, okay. It's when I was broken, okay.
Yes.
Maybe I'm not in a position to be teacher, I should have retired. Talk to the thought. Right, see how she feels about it. So, anyways, if anything, that's a great point to just, you're thinking about fitness to do a job. Are you fit to do a job? What does that mean? Like if you were to come up with a measure of like, let's say we're trying to study judges and we want to, come up with a metric to say, are you fit to do the job? I didn't know this, but apparently one of the judges in there, which I know there's a name, but I'm not going to say it. One of them is a raging alcoholic, right? What does that tell you about fitness of that person to do the job? We all have our problems. We all have our problems. Right? This guy's a raging alcoholic.
I'll just. I will tell you the answer. The answer is, if you do a pre-screening, an Alzheimer pre-screening for the brain, and there is an MRI for it, you can differentiate, you can get what you want by just doing the screening, but no one would agree on something like
Of
that.
course, that's a huge violation of your privacy. It's a huge violation. Okay, listen. The only part that we're interested in is the notion of the complexity of the concept and a metric that we want to build about. That's what's the last class. Let's say we did find an amazing metric, right? And we go out there and we apply that metric to every judge, in the Supreme Court and then the lower courts, every district of the thing, and we come up with a data set. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to vet that data set, right? So now we have a data set. We have an Excel sheet with a bunch of scores for every judge out there that we collected, and we need to vet. So before we do any analysis, we're going to look at the health of the data set, right? So we're going to look at the mean, the mode, the median. Then we're going to look for that convergence, right? So if the data set is good, we're going to start seeing that these numbers start to match. The mean, the mode, the median, they're going to be close to each other. Yeah? Remember that. We're going to look at the dispersion of the data set. The metric of dispersion is a standard deviation. And we're going to look for data sets that disperse in a healthy way. What is a healthy way? Well, that's a standard deviation that is usually no more than half of the mean. Right? So if you have a mean of 10, you want a standard deviation that's around 5. Now, this is a fast and loose rule of thumb, right? A standard deviation of 7 is still good, but as we start seeing that the standard deviation reach and become very close to the mean, you should start being suspicious of. If your standard deviation crossed that value, meaning if your standard deviation is higher than your mean, you're in trouble. You should not use that data set. Or if you're a high scale, like an advanced statistician, you would go the route of applying significantly more complex models than we will see here. Okay, there are models that are specifically designed for over dispersed data, they're very complex, we're not gonna use them. Okay? Over dispersed data in general is also difficult to find. So not something that we have to worry about too much. It's very unusual for you to find over dispersed data in the real world. So, but that's something that we want to think about. Then we also want to think about your outliers, right? Most data sets have outliers. The question you want to ask yourself is this outlier too much, too far, right? If it is too far, and again, fast and loose rule of thumb is if your outlier is sitting 3 standard deviations away from the mean, either below or above. If you have that, that's a sign that this outlier is it's too out there. So if you have, the average judge drinks like a cocktail day, and then the standard deviation is half, Clarence Thomas is drinking 7, then maybe, just maybe, we should exclude him in general. Or not. It's a secret process. Anyways, are we good with that? Do we understand all of this?
So, my question is, for the outlier, it's all based on personal judgment. There is no set of, say, parameters that you can apply to something like that.
There is no hard, there's not a number. Or, let me put it like this. You can do what's called the Goldfarb test. It will tell you to exclude a data set, but it's very unusual that it comes to it. Most likely, it's a judgment call. Now,
Fork test,
Goldfarb.
Goldfarb.
There's a few others. Goldfarb is one. So what I would suggest is mostly common sense. Starts with this idea of 3 standard deviations away from the mean is a good indicator. But common sense tells you otherwise, right? So age, the average age, for example, is height. 5'9" is an average height with a standard deviation of 2 inches or 3 inches. So we're looking 5'9", 6'1", 6'4", 6'7". So you start to get a 6'10", I think 4, something like that. But you start to get it like 6'10", you're like, oh. Right? So when you get to 6'10", it's not an anomaly, right? Yao Ming from the NBA, what is it, 7'1" or something? So in there, your common sense is going to start to play out. Now, how many times did you just run into Yao Ming at the Panera? So it's not a very common thing, right? So when you start getting to that number that makes you uncomfortable, that's when you kick in your common sense and you say, okay, 7 foot tall individual, I want to keep in the data set. There's only one, right? It's not that destructive. It's not that far out, but, I'm going to put a note here. Hey, there's an observation here, 7 foot tall. It's a little weird. Now, what if that was like 8 foot tall? Then you're just like, no, the type. How many, have you ever heard of an 8 foot tall person? Is there such a thing? I don't think so, right? Even that giant guy, the famous giant from Ukraine or whatever. There's a famous giant person. I forget his name.
In medicine, it exists.
Yeah, but in how many?
Well, I don't know the prevalence of the pituitary tumor that produces the growth hormone, but something like that exists.
I mean, I'm sure he does exist, but what's the chance that you run into him at Dunkin' Donuts?
8'11".
8'11". 8'11".
Yeah. Robert Watt. That's kind of crazy.
When did he die?
He's pretty young, I think. He was
Be that young to reach that. I mean,
22.
oh, but he does, right? So again, you're not gonna run into him. Yeah. Okay, so again, it's a common sense. Same thing, you see an adult, 3'9". Do they exist? Yes, but how often? Right, so there you want to make a check, right? Because it could be a little person. So, all right, little person, I'm going to include this. But if it's not a little person, then it's probably a type, right? 3'9", 5'9". So, you just want to be aware. I don't know how many times I have fixed people's names when I'm doing text analysis, and there's a person's name. I'm trying to do background check to see like ethnicity, right? The computer program I have, and it's like there's a name that doesn't match anything, and in there, say for example, their name is starting with a Q. What? So all you do is you change the Q for a W, and it instantly matches. What is happening in this case? Look at your keyboard. Right. Somebody was going to press W and then press Q because they're close together. It's a typo, but it's like, it's more than a typo. It's just like a, in the spur of the moment, person is typing fast, right? It's not just a simple mistake. It's like a preventable mistake. So in there, you can correct that and you can explain, look, this person, this was an outlier name. It couldn't match to anything, but upon obvious correction, because I understand keyboards, I was able to work it out. So there is no fast and rule. Common sense is your best direction. Are we good with that? So we know how to build data set. We know how to vet it. We have a quality data set, and then we start analyzing the data set. Yeah? So these points, right? Building a data set, vetting a data set, these are all steps towards the goal of this class, which is to run a standard analysis. Actually, we're going to run an ordinary analysis, hence the name ordinary least squares analysis, or OLS, as it's known, right? So the goal of today is to get us all the intuition that we need so that we can navigate this analysis with an understanding of what's happening in English. I don't want anybody here to actually focus on the mathematical aspects of it. Why is it called an ordinary least squares regression, right? There's a very obvious reason. It's because it does all its computation by looking for the least amount of squared means of differences, so ordinary least squares, right? So it computes a type of mean, and then it takes differences to the mean, and then it squares them, and then it looks for the least amount of squared values. Right? That's a very mathematical thing we don't need to worry about. All you need to know is that an analysis that checks relationships, and it gives you an output that speaks to this specific relationship by ways of characterizing it in 3 dimensions. So we will give you 3 dimensions that will allow you to then characterize this relationship. These dimensions are the direction, the strength, and the precision of the relationship. These are your bread and butter in statistics. Okay? Direction, strength, or magnitude. Probably going to use the word strength here. It's a more common word. But you might hear me switch back to magnitude since it's the one that I use most often. Right? Direction, magnitude, and precision. These are the 3 things that characterize a relationship. So before we can actually jump into these 3 things, it's important that we think a little bit about what is a relationship, purposes of this class, right? We all know what a relationship, we've got a boyfriend and girl, kids, roommates. So we all understand those things, but what does it mean in the purpose of this class, right? So for those of you in ICP, right, political science, there's lots of relationships that political science is interested in. For example, the relationship between FDI and influence. FDI is foreign direct investment and influence. So, for example, the United States invests in a lot of countries abroad. Right? So we help build roads in Africa. We're currently building a road. We're currently funding a port, state-of-the-art port in Bolivia. Not in Bolivia. Bolivia is a landlocked country, but we are kind of like creating the road that links Bolivia to state-of-the-art port. Why are we doing that? It's just because we're such good people. That's why don't we all like hug each other, just congratulate ourselves on what kind people we are, just helping a country that we don't even care. Is that really what's happening? What kind of trade? Why? I mean, we trade with a lot of countries. Why are we building helping Bolivia? What's in Bolivia? Oh, what type of mineral?
Oh, this is stuff that you got like going.
Cadmium. And a series of other silicates. The largest mine for silicates are in Bolivia. What do you use silicates for? Not just cell phones. I think we're doing good on cell phone batteries.
Chips, car chips, yeah.
Car chips?
Chips.
What is our friend Musk, Elon Musk? What's the next step here? In the next 10 years, every one of us is going to have one.
Batteries, like
Electric cars, right? So electric cars need big batteries, right? And there's this whole thing about, nobody's going to buy an electric car unless it can get to 400 miles, right? That's called range anxiety, right? So they need to come up with batteries that can get a car like an SUV, because we're in America, we are Americans, right? And if a car can't pull like a relatively large yacht behind it, like we don't consider it. We like big cars with so we need big batteries. And for that, we need cadmium and all these other silicates. Cadmium is actually not that modern a battery anymore. But the point is, we need that, and Bolivia has it, right? So we're like, and we're not kind. We're not just saying, hey, here, have a port, right? What do you think we're going to do with this port, right? When Russia comes in and says, hey, we want to buy cadmium from you, what are we going to say? Not from this port, you're not, right? Go see if you can get it in Ukraine or something, right? So that's, again, influence, right? So the more you invest, right, I am positive that there's a lot of strings attached to this port, right? You can only sell to these people. We come first. Like if we are going to sell and there's shortage, you ship to us first, then you ship to somebody else. Don't ship to those people, right? We get like customs. We go first. We get treated, right? So that's influence. And what is Bolivia going to say? No, everybody, you pay for this port, but everybody gets the same. They'll say, then we don't pay for anything, right? So there's a relationship, right? The more you invest, right? The more the more influence you have. Make sense? That's a relationship. There's a relationship between the amount of money that you invest in a foreign country, the type of influence that you get to exert in that country. You invest nothing, get nothing. Invest a lot, get a lot. There's something going on right now called the Beltline Initiative in China, right, where they're paying to build roads all over the world. Right, they're trying to link China to all these parts of Africa, Middle East, Southeast. Yeah, but it's not over yet, right? From what I understand. So again, do you think this is coming out of kindness? You know, they're like, give you COVID, so now we're going to give you a road. I'm sorry. Is that really what's happening? I mean, if you look at supply chain issues in Africa and where stuff, I mean, not in China, where their stuff comes from, you're gonna see that it's coming from where all these roads are going. So, same story. That's a relationship, and we can test that relationship. Statistics. Another relationship is xenophobia and nationalism. Is that new to you, or does that ring the bell in any way? So xenophobia is fear of strangers, right? And nationalism. The more xenophobic you are, the more nationalist you are, right? So you go to the country, like you drive to like, where is it? Like the Hocking Hills over there, right? Anybody here from Hocking Hills before I stop talking a lot of smack? Oh, it's beautiful. You should all go. There's no xenophobia there.
I know, there's a lot.
So, again, the more xenophobic you are, the more nationalist you are. The more like, America, America is for America, right? Which is code for America, right? You're never going to hear somebody saying, America is for Americans. I'm talking to them queers and blacks. No, you're not going to hear that. But what's his name? The character from Dave Chappelle?
Oh,
Clayton Bigsby, right? That's why it's so funny, because no, right? You're never gonna see that, right? So, anyways, does that make sense? Those are relationships. There's a relationship. The more xenophobic you are, the more nationalist you're going to be, right? The more diverse you are, the less nationalist you're going to be, because you have an understanding that what it means to be an American is different to an African American than it is to a gay, homosexual person, than it is to a homosexual black, than it is to a Jew, a Muslim. These are all very different things. We experience them differently, and that's the beauty, right? They say no, there's no better education than traveling, right? When you see that one, you never have to learn to accept gays, blacks, Jews, homosexual. No, that's whatever. You never have to learn to accept all of them. The day that you learn to accept one of them, you automatically accept all the others, because it's the simple understanding like, oh, there's people that are different than me, and they're legit. Once you understand that, you see a different person, and you're like, oh, you're different. High five. Versus, oh, you're different. Right? Small difference. Sometimes that little sound. Anyways, so we understand this. Yeah? Stop me if you don't. MPA folks, they deal with different types of relationships, but they're still the same thing. For example, early adoption increases program effectiveness. So if you're managing a public organization and you have a program, folks that enter into those programs early, they do better than people that enter into the program later. Early adoption is a common thing. You got a program to increase nutrition in schools, and then you got schools that adopt the program right away. Those schools start doing better right away. You got late stragglers, they do worse. So there's a relationship in how early you adopt and how well you do. Right? Greater monitoring decreases success. So this is a story of recidivism. Those of you that want to study like people getting in and out of jail, we already know that if you are checking people, especially for drug use, and you are forcing them to check in with the local sheriff every 48 hours, they're going to go back. They're going to end up back in jail. Why is that? Because nothing says you're a fuck up like reminding them that they're a fuck up every 48 hours.
Yeah.
So let's give them a little bit of wiggle room. Not remind them every 48 hours. Give them like a week. Even God rested on Sunday, guys. Right? So the more frequently you do this monitoring, the higher the recidivism rate. Now, that's not to say, I'm not advocating that we should just like, oh, set them loose, right? Get the child abusers to become substitute teachers. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But like, there is a good, like, there's such a thing as too much. There's obviously such a thing as too little, but we gotta find a sweet spot. That's a relationship. There's a relationship between how often you check and their likelihood of ending up back in jail. Do you understand that? That's a relationship as well. Another common one, more credit hours increases hourly wages, meaning more education you get at college, the more money you get, right? So if you enrolled in one class at community college, don't expect that you're now making $70 an hour. However, if you enroll into 120 credit hours, that's your BA, chances are you're gonna do better. I'm not guaranteeing $70 an hour, but, 30, 35. Yeah? So there's a relationship there. We understand, you understand these things. Is there any question about this conversation of, put these for you since you're a business person, right? More ads leads to greater sales. So if you're gonna put more ads out there and billboards and on the internet, on the Super Bowl, right? Go, what's the name of the team? Go Bengals, right? So yay Bengals, right? So if you put more ads on the Super Bowl, you make more sales. That's pretty straightforward, yeah? Okay. So this is what we want to do. We want to use statistics to check if these relationships are true. Do they really hold? Right now, if you're like a Joe Hogan or what's it, Joe Rogan? Yeah. If you're a Joe Rogan fan, right? Like, what is it? The type of stuff that he says, he looks like you.
Similar, I mean, honestly, I'm saying the truth. Is there any shame of saying the truth?
Yes, there is. No, I'm kidding. I do look like him in that I also have $100 million. Right.
And he has tattoos also.
Does he? I know he's a big muscle head. Anyways, it's great. I love Joe Rogan. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of misinformation, right? Does this lead to that? Like, how do we know? Well, we can check. So if we are going to check, here are some of the things that we need to start thinking about. It's very important that we get these things. So when you go through this, doesn't make sense to you. It might not sink in right away at first, but it's important that at least you understand. So at a minimum, for us to have a relationship, we need to have two variables. That's two concepts, right? That's the bare minimum. For you to say this leads to that, this causes that, we need a this and we need a that. Yeah? So that's the minimum. We need a variable that's going to be a metric for this, whatever this is. And we need a metric for that, whatever that is. Yeah? Well, this and that have names. Very important that you get them. These are variables, and there's a dependent variable and an independent variable. Anybody want to volunteer? What's a dependent variable? What's an independent variable? Raise your hand before you answer. Yes, what's your name again? Remind me. Felicia.
This is the independent standalone, and then
Great. Say that again for everybody to hear. Perfect.
the independent variable stands alone, and then the dependent stands on independent.
So, no? You didn't get it.
Oh, no, I was always taught changes your dependent.
Yes.
It's the same thing, it's just worded different.
Yes, but she took it a step further and said the independent variable stands alone, which is correct. The dependent variable, its value does not stand alone, meaning it's not a product of itself. It's a product of the independent variable. So, xenophobia leads to nationalism, okay? So what we're saying here is the more xenophobic you are, the more nationalist you are, yeah? So xenophobia is the independent variable. It stands alone. Its variable is on a scale of 0 to 10, 7. Right? 7 is like, yeah, okay. 7 level xenophobic. A 10 is her uncle with the positive, the cuts. Right? So that stands alone. Now, nationalism, the value of nationalism doesn't stand alone. It's not a random value. What is it? It's dependent on your level of xenophobia, right? So that's the point that she made. An independent variable, always, its value doesn't need to be explained. Whereas nationalism, it depends on something else. Now this is confusing and we're taking liberties here because xenophobia, your level of xenophobia is probably a product of something else, like whether or not you were raised in Hawken Hills. So an independent variable can always be another relationships dependent variable. And we can keep going until Adam and Eve. But for the sake of this relationship, there's one that is dependent on this one, and then there is another one, this one that stands alone. Do you understand this? Yeah.
You are saying that nationalism depends on xenophobia, just as an example.
Yes.
How we can make sure that we are not making rationalization?
What do you mean?
Rationalization means,
No, I know what rationalization means,
but here what happened. Mathematically, if you look at the relationship, you have to prove that every xenophobic is nationalist.
no, that's not what you have to prove.
Oh, well, okay. That nationalism depends 100% on xenophobia.
Not 100%.
Okay.
And some.
So it's not restrictive rule.
It's not restrictive. It's just, it's gonna give us.
So my question is, here's
give
my,
us
yeah, I know,
a level
I
of
know,
variance.
I know what you mean. But my question is, to which extent you would accept that relationship as a relationship? For example,
We have thresholds.
so what is the threshold?
We'll get to it. You're jumping the gun. Right? So, do we understand this idea of an independent variable and a dependent variable? We don't even have to go that far as understanding this idea of standing alone and not standing alone. As long as you understand that one depends on the other. And obviously that you can identify which one is which. If you can't, you'll be in trouble. Somebody in this class will make that mistake, more than one. It's a very common mistake. So I want you to be aware of it, and be aware of your level of confidence. If you can just, go back to those examples and say, independent, dependent, and you're clear and you're confident, that's great. If you are not that confident, there's no shame in Dr. Costa email, kind of spinning my wheels here. Like, I'd rather you do that than you just hide and make a mistake. Okay? So, what is it, once we have that, what is this analysis going to do? It's going to do a study of covariance, right? So, just breaking down, since the story of this class is make sure that we understand things in English, let's take this word and break it down a little bit. Our goal is to do an analysis of covariance. Covariance is two words, variance and co, right? Variance, the word variance means change or variation. So it's a study of variation or of change in values. So we're going to be observing people with low levels of nationalism and people with high levels of nationalism. All right, so we're going to be looking at changing values of nationalism. We're also going to be looking at changing values of xenophobia, low values, mid values, and high values. So that's your variation, your change. And the expectation that we have, if this relationship is true, is what? What do we expect? Somebody explain to me in English the expectation that we have for this relationship.
The state ministry.
Yeah, so we're saying, I'm making a claim here, right? So we're still navigating the world of like misinformation or fake news. I'm saying xenophobia leads to nationalism. So
So the relationship might be a linear relationship.
no, that's too much.
So it would be if you have a high xenophobia.
And you said vice versa?
Yeah, so if it's low,
Okay, so let's be specific. If I have a low level of xenophobia, of xenophobia, what do you expect from my nationalism? And if I have a high level of xenophobia, you expect my nationalism to be? Right, so we're expecting variation on both, and we're expecting that this variation goes together, meaning if the value is low for xenophobia, then the value of nationalism is also low. As the value of xenophobia goes up, so does the value of nationalism. So it goes together. What's the Greek word for together? Co, right? So we're doing an analysis of covariation. That's what it is. We're going to check if these numbers are varying and if they are, most importantly, varying together. If they are varying together, meaning when one goes up, the other one goes up. When one goes down, the other one goes down. If there is covariance, then we have evidence, right? If one goes up and the other one doesn't move, then we don't have variance. So we don't have the relationship. Now, if one goes up and the other one doesn't necessarily go up or doesn't go up at the same time, then we don't have co. We don't have co, we don't have a relationship. So those are two parts of the same coin in a sense. But that's what we're doing. We're going to do a study of covariance. Are we good there? Do we understand? These are very important concepts. Again, so nobody wants to be the person raising their hand and saying, I don't understand. You're better off doing it. Don't be afraid or ashamed. Yeah, we're good. What does a relationship look like for those of you that are more of a visual learner? What does it look like in terms of like math? Meaning graphically speaking, a picture of a relationship is not, two people holding hands. The equivalent of two people holding hands is this. This is a beautiful relationship. They're going to get married. Right here, they're going to be the whole, woo! So, somebody explain to me, why is this a relationship?
Correlation.
Okay, but
And there is a clustering around the linear, assuming that this
English.
It's slow.
Isabella, okay. It's better, but still, no.
The independent and dependent variable are moving up at the same time.
Okay, we're getting better. Still English. I mean, dependent and independent is still not English.
Dots are close.
And that went too far. Too far. Dots close doesn't get you there. I'm trying to give you credit. Yeah, so here, the value of this, let's take this point over here, right? So it's somewhere around, I want to say 35. So this is the independent variable. It says so right here. So this is it applies to any relationship. When you have like a low level of say 35, you expect the dependent variable to be 20. So this could be This could be age and wage. If you're 35, that means you've been on the job for about 10 years. You're making somewhere between $20 and $25 an hour. Let's pull this out of my bag of examples. You may like it or whatever, but I'm just trying to say. Right? So then now you're 40, been promoted, right? So you should expect to be making like close to $30 an hour. Okay? So as we start to move up, we start to see that the dependent variable, as the values here move up, right? 30 to 40 to 50, you start to see these values go up as well. Relationship between this and this one. As this value goes up, that value goes up. I saw some squinting over here, so I'm going to give you a couple seconds to formulate your question. All good here. It's pretty obvious or not? That's something, here's a tip for you if you ever get an education. You should never say that an example is pretty obvious, because then no one's going to say, I don't get it. Okay? So this is not that obvious, actually. Get it, it's fine. This is incredibly difficult. Does anybody not get it? No genius for getting it. Right? So this is what a relationship looks like. Right? So what we want, what we're looking for really, is indicators. We want language that's going to allow us to talk about the precision of this relationship, the strength of this relationship, and the direction of this relationship. That's how we're going to say, corral the evidence. We're going to speak of these three things. And these things, in the world of statistics, are enough to characterize relationship. Every relationship, right? So I'm very adamant, in order to get your guards down about statistics, I'm always adamant to correlate, to link statistics to language. And anybody who speaks a different language will understand this very quickly. Different languages express different things in different, the same thing in different ways, right? So even if you go across the pond and see English people, how they talk about certain things is very different than the way we talk about certain things. Right? So languages are very important. They have their own specific vocabularies. And even topics themselves have their own vocabulary. If you want to express love, like we have a certain thing, or a certain vocabulary that characterizes love. Like you say, you do more this and more of that. Oh, you're more in love, you're less in love, right? So there, statistics has its own language, right? How precise it is, how strong it is, and what direction it is. These are the elements of the language of statistics that allow you to characterize a relationship, right? So I want to characterize my relationship and tell you how strong my relationship is with my wife. I want to tell you how much money I spent on her. So just got her a new car. I'm out of the doghouse. Yeah? Like if you're talking about performance in college, there's this particular language that we're talking about. What is it? Grades, right? That's the only language that students understand, right? Fast forward 4 weeks from now, I'm going to have half of you, what's my grade in this class? And I'm like, well, how much you're understanding? And you're like, just tell me my grade, please. Language of performance. Like in the statistics, the language of statistics is how precise, how strong, and what direction is. So the goal for today, for the rest of this class, is to characterize these three things so that you can speak the language of the relationship and paint a picture of the relationship for others. With that in mind, let's take a 5-minute break. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
You're not going to feel this one. Right, you'll part two. Okay, guys. All right. So here is, oops, go back. So here is our relationship, like we talked about, right? And here is a less precise relationship.
that's what I was thinking.
So less precise, yeah, or dispersed, less precise. Do you see what's happening here?
Yeah, the cluster.
What about the cluster?
The first one,
The first-
yeah, the first one where there is a strong relationship between the two variables, there is more clustering
So let me
around.
stop you with the language, or you already muffled the language, so I'm gonna stop you there. Somebody else, I know where you're going, but the language, you're using confusing language, so somebody else wanna jump in and what's happening here?
The cluster's tighter
Thank you.
on the
Beautiful.
first.
This is a tighter cluster. So what does that mean for us? Can somebody, again, in English, and don't say points together. Dots together. Don't say that either. Tell me, like, okay, so what I heard from a lot of you, it's all correct. And what I heard is a previous stats class that you took, that somebody drilled that in your brain and you just spitting that out. But I want like an in English explanation of what's happening here.
Close result. More happening in the first one than the second one. Close result.
There's more happening here
Yeah.
than in here?
Yeah.
What
Close.
do you mean more? What do you mean more?
It seems like a bigger difference between the two.
Okay, I like that. There's a big, and what does this bigger difference means to us in terms of a relationship? Yes.
In this one, the relationship is weaker.
Yes, that's correct. But I want you to explain, what does that mean for us? No.
It's closely related.
Yes.
It's less
So
predictable.
you think it's wrong.
Predictable. Not
Or it's not.
less reliable. So let me give you an example. Okay, so let's put like a case that will make this more palatable, right? So take the example of salary, something that all of you are looking forward to, right? So you're all going to graduate from either the MBA or the ICP program, and you're all going to go on to make a boatload money, right? Boatloads are coming. So go do an interview, and you kill it. Then they come back with you to you, and they make an offer. Look, we are really looking forward to having you work here, and we're going to offer you a salary. We're putting together a package, but it's going to come, and it's going to be somewhere between $55,000 a year and $59,000 a year. Okay? That's great. Yes, great. 55 and 59. It could be better, sure, but 55 and 59. So you're like, right? You go home, you're dripping in swagger. You're like, man, I'm happening. Like, gonna get myself, that car, upgrade, all of that stuff. You're super confident. You go on another interview and you kill it again. They're like, oh, we want you. You're the person for the job. And we're gonna make an offer to you. We don't know exactly what that number is, but we're putting together a package. And it's gonna be somewhere between 25,000 and 95,000.
That's not right.
So, like, which one inspires more confidence? The first one. Why?
Closer together.
Right, so you know what to expect. Right, so there's an expectation here. Could be as low as 55. Could be as high as 59. Yay! Right. So, but the thing is, like what we're talking here is a difference of trim in your new car, right? You get the AMG Mercedes, you're gonna get A class, but it's still a Mercedes. Whereas the first one, now we're talking the difference between a Mercedes and a Pinto, right? It's like if you get 25,000, you could do better than with the job that you have. Or according to Republicans, you should just stay unemployed and sit on Biden's benefits. Anyways, you get the point, right? That offer is very imprecise. That 25 to 95 It's not something that allows you to, for example, make a plan. It doesn't allow you to have, to build a certain expectation. Like if you know you're getting a job between 55 and 59, even if you don't have that number yet, you can go to that dealership, right? Because $4,000 more a year over 12 months, we're talking at $300 a month more, something like that. So it's not gonna really make or break, all right? Whereas if you're getting that, if you're thinking about that other job, you can go to the dealership, right? If they make it 95, you can go to the Maserati dealership. If they make it 25, then you're gonna have to go to Joe's Lots, Joe's Used Cars, like on the corner over there. So you can't. So this is the story of precision. This is a very imprecise relationship, meaning as the values of X increase, X or your independent variable increase, the values of your dependent variable, they also increase. But they increase all over the place, meaning here you have 40, right? So at 40, you could either be at $25 an hour, or you could be at $35 an hour, right? So there's a big variation for the same level, right? At 50, you could be making, look here, this is an interesting point. At 50, you could be making less than somebody at 40, which is counter to the entire relationship, right? The expectation that we have is that somebody at 50 would be better off at somebody at 40, maybe making more. Yeah? But because the relationship is so weak and so imprecise, there's a possibility that within the relationship itself, there are higher values of the dependent variable found in lower values of the dependent. That's a story of precision. Precision has to do with how much variation we find in the dependent variable when the independent variable is not even moving. Does that make sense? A lot to process. Take a second to like come up with your example, raise your hand and say, does that mean this? Could we use this example? And if you can come up with your own example, that's the surefire way for you to understand it. Yeah?
So here's my question, is that sometimes when we have a relationship, when we assume that there is a relationship.
Yeah.
It cannot, sometimes it might not be realized unless you plot it in order to see the incidence, if it formed certain clustering or not.
You don't need to visualize it. We're gonna have, the computer is gonna calculate a number for us. And that number, okay, is a metric, is a measure of just how tight this cluster is. So when you run the numbers, you're gonna get a measure of tightness. So even if you don't do this, right, when you just run the numbers, if the numbers are healthy, you vetted them, they're all good, you're gonna come up with a reliable tightness measure, then that would then allow you to make an argument as to why this is a good relationship. You're going to be able to say, look, this relationship has a tightness level of 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, whatever. Right? So that's the first language, or that's the first vocabulary you have at your disposal. And that is characterizing the tightness of the relationship. Tightness has to do with precision. How precise can I expect the dependent variable to be given any values of the dependent variable? Right? If you can here, right, we can expect the range of values for 40 to be this precise. If we just, if I were to go, if my thing was working, Oops. So this is how precise it is. This one is right two times less precise. Yeah, it takes this much. So this one, the values of your dependent variable, they're two times as wide, two times less precise. It's like if I were to say, look, make a guess as to what this value could be. And you say, oh, it's between 1 and 2. Okay, that's a guess. Then I say, okay, I have somebody else make a guess as to what that value is. And somebody says it's between 1 and 4. Well, 1 and 4 is a significantly less precise guess. Okay? Like if I were to say, if you were to come to me, Diane. Right? Diane's concerned with her grade. So she comes to me and she says, Dr. Costa, please give me an idea of what my grade in this class is going to be. And I tell her, don't worry, between an F and an A. There you go. That's exactly the reaction that you should be. Now, if I were to tell you it's between a B and an A, that's significantly more reassuring, right? Even if I were to tell you it's between an F and a D, that's more reassuring because, well, that's not good. But anyways, the point is that the more precise we give the interval, the smaller the interval, the more precise we can be, the more information that we can have, like the more we can deduce from. Telling you, what should your answer be if I tell you that your grade is going to be between an A and a D, and between an A and an F? What should your answer be? Or at least in the back of your head. You shouldn't vocalize it.
I'm not gonna spend September at home.
No. As far as what you know. I mean, you already know that your grade is going to be between an F and an A, right? So I'm not telling you anything you don't know already. So basically, the information that I'm giving you is useless. So the less and less precise a relationship is, the more and more useless it is for you. If you have a relationship that is really, really wide, like really, really weak, it's not very useful. The job of the statistician is to reduce uncertainty. And if I'm coming in with a really uncertain outcome, you're not doing the job very well. Right? This red line here is the perfect relationship. That's like Sony and Cher. That is lost on you. Yes.
Yeah, that's a bad example.
What's the perfect relationship?
Michelle and Barack.
Michelle and Barack. I was going to say, there you go. Michelle and Barack is perfect. So what's her name? And what's Oprah and Stedman. Perfect. Stedman knows to stay away. Can somebody explain to me why is this the perfect relationship? The red line.
Because it's regular. You can predict it.
I mean,
That increases at a regular
no.
intervals.
No.
Because if we're using the same example, that's just saying like you were going to have an A, you were going to have a B, you were going to have a C, so on and so forth.
I'll tell you. If you take 2 points on that line,
Which one? Which line?
on the
The red
red line,
line.
if you take any 2 points, it will not violate the relationship.
You're right. Your language is again loose and might generate confusion. The red line is perfect because there is absolutely no variation, right? There is no range here, right? Like Milo was saying, A, B, C. So in this here, in this relationship right here, I'm giving you a range really wide. This one, the range is a little shorter, so we're improving. In this one, there is absolutely no range. So I can tell you for 20, if your independent variable is 20, the value will be 70. It's 40, the value will be 25. 60, the value will be 175. So I can tell you exactly what that value is. That's a perfect relationship. It's so tight that the points became a line. This red line is the perfect relationship. You will never observe that in the real world. It doesn't exist. Right? In statistics, you will never find this. But it's a good illustration of what a really packed, tight relationship would look like. Absolutely no range, just the value smack on. Right? So these are the explanations that I gave you. Right? Precision, a precision of a relationship, that's your definition, like at least your working definition. The precision of a relationship has to do with the possible range of values of your dependent variable given a fixed value of your dependent variable. Okay, so height and age. You are 5 years old. I expect you to be between 30 and 36 inches. You are 10 years old. I expect you to be 48, between 48, 60 inches. If you got like when you're 13, I expect you to be somewhere between 60 and 72 inches and so on. And then we plateau. But what I'm doing is I'm giving you a range. If science was so precise that we could say, this person will be 5 foot 6.5. At this age, you'll be this 5 foot 6.5. At this age, you'll be 5 foot 7.25. Then there would be no range. That would be a perfect relationship. Right? Visually speaking, we're going to go back to the graph. If you were to plot it, tight relationship, a precise relationship is one where the cluster is really strong around that perfect line. You're not going to get to the perfect line ever, but it will be really tight. Imprecise relationships are those where the cluster is weak and it's all over the place. Right? The OLS regression will give you a measure of precision. It's called a t-value. T-value is short for a student value. Student is the person who created this scale. The in statistics, they do not allow namings of scales to people that don't have higher degrees. So the person that invented this, he didn't have a PhD. So instead of getting his name, the scale was called the student's scale. It's talk about gatekeeping. But anyways, the t value is the measure of tightness. You're going to get that from the computer. It's going to give you a t value of 1, 2, 3, 7, whatever, right? And that's going to be your measure. You need to make a connection, right? Just to kind of like a little mnemonic device. T, you think of tight. Higher the t value, the tighter it is. Yeah? So that you remember. T, tight. Tight, precise. Right? The larger the t value, the more precise your relationship is, the better it is for you in terms of evidence. Right? So if you want to convince somebody that you're right, you better come in with that really, really tight measure. Right? Say, for example, you are trying to get funding for your program. Your program is one that is going to increase the chances of kids entering into college, right? So you have a college entrance program and you want to institute that in the state of Ohio, right? So you're going to go to the government and you're going to say, look, if you give me money, the more hours that kids spend in this program, the greater their chance they're going to enter college. More specifically, if they spend 40 hours in this program, their chances of entering college is going to range from 80 to 85%. 40 hours, 80 to 85%. That's a pretty good argument. It's better than if you go over there and say, look, kids spend 40 hours in this program, their chances of entering college range from 15 to 95%. Like, well, I'm not going to take your course, right? So height, better. Yes,
Ask a question about the T value then.
yes.
So like, what's like the threshold as far as like what a good, a bad T value?
Excellent question. The threshold, this is where statistics loses credibility. A threshold is arbitrary to the discipline. Okay, so in political science, the minimum threshold expected is 1.96. Okay? In sociology, it's 1.64. In economics, it's 2.55. 6.
Sociology, how much is?
1.64.
How about medicine?
Medicine depends on the field. So, but it ranges from 164 to 2.55.
They will tell us.
Yes.
You take that number, like say 1.6 for, is the 1.9 a higher T? It has to be a higher level decision for that field.
Yes, absolutely. So political science has a higher standard than, say, sociology. Economics has a higher standard than political science. Now, that's not to say that one discipline is more taking care, like has a higher bar. You know, it's not saying, oh, economics is better than political science. They have a higher standard. It's not that. It has to do with the subject, right? So economics is about money. Yeah. Most of economics is about money. Money or wealth and the generation of wealth and everything that is involved is very easy to measure. We look at how much money you made, are you employed this many hours. So the metrics of economics are such that they're higher quality. Because they're higher quality, they can afford to have a higher threshold. Right? Now move on to sociology, where in sociology, we are studying things that are super, super complex. Like the relationship, for example, between racism and prejudice. Right? What is racism? What is race to begin with? What is racism and what is prejudice? So you already starting off the bat with a super, super loose concept that will generate very, very poor metrics. And if you apply a super high threshold to a super poor metric, the discipline is just never going to move forward, right? Because you're never going to basically reach that block. So don't confuse a lower threshold with a lower quality of study. It just has to do with the subject.
What about public administration? Is there a
Public-
standard, or is it
what-
like all over the shop because of?
Yes, the short is yes. Now, let me say this, that since the early 2000s, most disciplines have moved towards the direction of rejecting these standards altogether and just talking about precision. Just saying, look, this relationship has a precision level of 0.85, right? According to standards, 0.85 crosses the threshold, but it wouldn't, for example, reach the threshold in another discipline. What does that say about this specific topic, right? So I have gotten away publishing a paper where the relationship I found was less than 1.96, it was 1.89. But I made this argument. I was like, nobody has ever studied this. Nobody has ever touched this because it's so complicated. And quite frankly, one of the things I wrote was like, nobody does this because they know they're not going to cross the threshold. And as a consequence, nobody learns anything about this topic. It's one of those, it's about corruption, right? So corruption is a real big problem. It destroys everything it touches. And we don't know much about it because it's really difficult to study, because people that are corrupt are really good at hiding what they do. So we can't observe it. So off the bat, the metric is bad, right? So I made this argument. You don't publish this, we don't learn, right? So yes, I didn't make the threshold, but there's something to be learned here. And then I got a letter from the editor. Oh yeah, okay, I'll accept it, right? So most subjects are moving in the direction of just hearing what you have to say about precision and shying away from these hardcore really, 1.96 is the minimum we'll accept.
So in this class, is it like a certain threshold you want to be?
So I navigate around 1.96 for several reasons. None of them are good. 1.96 is what I was taught. I teach you. It's what my home discipline of political science uses. But what I'm really interested in is to hear, like, if you're ever around the threshold and you're just like really close but not at it, like I'm interested in being convinced that it's a good exercise. That was especially for those of you who are practitioners. Like, so you know, for those of you in the MPA program, it's something that you should exercise, like the ability to say, okay, I didn't reach the threshold, but hear me out. Because you can convince somebody by just showing how knowledgeable you are. Are we good? Do we understand this idea of precision? Okay, so that's your T value. Now, let's go back here, you know, to our standard relationship. So this is a relationship that we have. We've looked at it before. Let's now compare it to something else. That's this one. What's happening here? Don't say that this relationship is suffering from me. What's happening?
It's like square.
So, well, it's not moved. These are two separate relations I want to compare. So then we have this one and we have this one. How would you characterize this relationship with reference to this relationship? Lower is too vague. I don't really know what you mean. I mean, other than this is lower to the ground.
I would say like the dependent variable has less of an effect on the independent variable.
The dependent variable has lost.
Sorry, the dependent variable has less of an effect over time on the independent variable.
Has or suffers?
Both.
No, remember, the dependent variable doesn't have any effect. It depends on somebody else. So it doesn't impact anything. So it either it suffers an impact or it is impacted by. We're getting closer. Anybody else want to chime in? Yes, Diane.
So this is weak, right?
This is a weaker relationship. Yes. Anybody else want to chime in?
Because the independent variable in this one has less effect on the dependent variable than the first one.
Yes.
So that's why it is weak.
Yes. Anybody else want to chime in? Like express, even if you just, you know, verbalizing in your own words helps you understand. Yes.
It's flatter than the first.
Yes. Flatter.
So flatter is the direction. Like it's, it has a good direction.
Don't use the word direction. Direction is something else. Yes. Ashley, you want to?
It's not as close to the line. Like you showed us the line and what
No,
it's supposed to.
forget the line.
No.
Forget the line. Yes.
It
Diane.
plateaus a lot more quickly than
Okay. Yes. So what's happening here? Anybody else want to chime in? So what's happening here is a story of the impact of this, our independent variable, on the dependent variable. Here, the impact of the independent variable is stronger. The impact has to do with how much change the independent variable forces the dependent variable. All right, so if we move from 30 to 40, we see a change in the value of the dependent variable going from somewhere around 10, right, to somewhere around 50. So there's a change of 5. Do you see that? On this other one, as we go from 30 to 40, it's you know, at 30, it's somewhere around here, which is like, I want to say 8 or not, no, 8. Let's put 8. And then as we move from 30 to 40, we go from 8 to 9. So in the first one, going from 30 to 40 gave us a bump in value of how much? Was it 10 or 5? 5. In this one, the same change from 30 to 40 only generated a bump of 1 to 9. So the impact that changes in the dependent variable can have is weaker on this one than it is on this one. And there's some, don't. Look, my goal is to get everybody here to learn, and we'll spend as much time as it takes. Don't be.
Don't say that. I always ask too many questions.
Okay,
this is my stupid question.
there are no stupid questions. Stupid is not to ask.
Okay, but why does it matter? Because it's.
Why does it matter? Let me stop you there. Why does it matter?
Ask me my question.
Yeah.
It just seems like, you know, what's the word I want? It just seems like different points on a scale, like on a continuum scale, right?
No, it's not. Let me give you an example. Let's go back to the job, right? You have 2 jobs, right? And in the first one, let's say they both want you bad. Right? So you go and they're trying to convince you. And one of them says, look, we are really committed to your growth as a professional. Okay. And we are going to prove that by giving you a raise of $5,000 for every year you work with us. Okay. So for every year that you're there, you're going to get a bump in salary of $5,000. And you're like, okay, put that on hold. Let me go talk to the other people. Say, oh my God, Diane, we're really committed to you. We really want you to work for us, and we're really committed to your growth as a professional. So for every year that we're here, we're going to give you a bump in salary of $1,000. Okay. Which one is more committed to your growth as a professional? First one, right? Because the impact of 1 year on your salary is $5,000 versus the second one, where the impact on your salary is only $1,000 per year. Yeah? So this is what we're measuring. Like here, this is your income on that first one, where you're moving up $5,000 for every year. So if we were to graph it, you have this more catastrophic, not catastrophic, more astronomical or emphatic slope. The slope is going to be higher. The second one is this one, where another year goes by and you're just getting meager $1,000 raise. Yeah.
That's my point. Like, it's all relative. It depends on what you're studying, right? So there's not a clear way to know what's strong and what's weak because it depends on what you're looking at.
Well, we're looking at the same thing. How much money, the impact of a year on your salary. Yeah? I mean, I understand your concern that we have to standardize comparison. But if we are comparing the same thing, like for example, this is the graph of wage increase per year for company 1, and this is the graph of wage increase per year for company 2, then my question is, which company has a stronger increase per year? This one or this one?
So it only means anything in relationship to other
Absolutely.
things happening. But it doesn't mean anything on its own. That's what I meant.
Let me see if I put that in there, because it's somewhere in there. Yeah, you are absolutely right. It only means something in comparison to another. And those have to be standardized. But we understand this? So in the first one, what we're looking for is the dispersion, right, of the cluster. That's a measure of precision. Yeah? In the second one, we're looking at the slope. That's a measure of strength. So in terms of evidence, what are we looking for in terms of evidence? What's the strongest evidence you can come up with?
One with more slope.
And
And that's more precise.
that's more precise, right? So if you want to do a mic drop, right, you want to walk in there with strong and precise relationships, right? If you walk in there with a strong and imprecise, you're losing ground, right? If you walk in there with a precise but weak, you're also losing ground. Which one is better? Is somebody's gonna ask me, which one is better, strong and imprecise or precise and weak? Like there is no better. There's just you lost footing. Like which foot do you want me to cut? Your foot, right foot, or your left foot? I guess your left foot. So forget that. That's not gonna eat. The point is, what you're really looking for is a strong and precise relationship, right? That's like your smoking gun. That's your mic drop. It's a very strong evidence. The computer is going to give you. The computer is going to give you a measure of the slope. You're going to see me do this a lot. Weak relationship, strong relationship. So you can think of the coefficient as the angle, right? The greater the angle, the stronger the relationship. The greater the angle, the more, the steeper it is your line. Does that make sense? So the computer is going to give you a coefficient. It's called a coefficient estimate. Right? It's going to estimate the coefficient for you. The coefficient estimate is a measure of strength of the impact. Make an estimate. I got this bold, like another mnemonic device for you. The coefficient estimate is a measure of steepness, right? The more steep it is, the steeper it is, the stronger it is. So the estimate is a measure of strength. ST and ST. Try to remember that. Remember, T value is a measure of tightness. Tightness is precision. Estimate is a measure of steep, a measure of strength. Larger estimates are better than smaller estimates. The steeper it is, the stronger it is. Yes? Any questions? We good? Milo.
I'm gonna ask the same question again. Is there like a like relatively, what numbers are we looking at?
No,
Larger, smaller?
there isn't. This is a really tough one. It depends on a lot of other things. Like, for example, the metric that you're using. There's also a lot of tricks involved in changing like the slope. So you really have to be aware of what you're talking about. It's more about understanding the subject than a fast and loose cut. There are no thresholds other than zero. What would be a zero estimate? If your coefficient had a zero estimate, what would it be?
No relation.
Yes. But what would the slope be like?
It correspond or it is parallel to the lower.
It's the x-axis.
It would be parallel to the x-axis. It would be flat, right? There's no angle, meaning there's no relationship. You work here for 1 year, you get a $5 an hour. You work here for 10 years, you get $5 an hour. You work here for 65 years. Right? What's the greatest example of a flat relationship in economics? Most common, most clarifying relationship in economics of a flat relationship. Slavery. Right? Don't laugh. It's sad. Right? Doesn't matter how long you've been working at the farm, how much money are you getting? But there's no relationship between how good a slave you are and how much money you make. How long you've been working and how much money you make. How efficient you are and how much money you make. How loyal you are to your owner. There's no relationship. It's all flat. Right? Yes.
One more question out of curiosity. So like, does it range then following the steepness, like example? Does it range from like 0 to like 90 to 180?
No, it's not, it's the story of the angle that I gave you is just so you can understand it. It's not an actual measure of an angle, okay? That measure is dependent on the metric itself. And as we move forward, you're gonna see how just there's more to it. I just want you to understand the idea. As we move forward, you see that it gets more complicated. I just don't want to overwhelm you from the beginning. These are also very simple relationships. I'm giving you bivariate relationships. Right? It gets more complicated as we move forward. But for now, I just want you, my biggest concern is that you separate the story of strength with the story of precision. Yeah? T's and estimates. Okay, now we have our final or third and final, our third and final characterizer of the relationship, and that is this direction. Okay, so you can have this relationship. This is our first one, the one that we introduced. So you have as a benchmark, and you have this one. What is happening here? Inversion. Can somebody else explain that to me? Just because you know what you're talking about, and I want to give other people an opportunity to chime in as well. Somebody explain to me what an inversion is.
It's the negative one, right?
That's a negative relationship. That's precisely what I want to focus on, this idea of negative relationship. What is a negative relationship?
So like, to use your example, just gonna say, the first one is like, I don't know, what, so nationalism and xenophobia, right?
Yes.
The second one is like your fancy cars and mail-in.
So with this,
So reverse.
let me, let's, small. Perfect. That's right. So what's an inverse relationship, right? Remember those people driving the Ferraris and the Porsches, right? And that, anatomically speaking, right, they're less endowed, right? So as your member gains in volume or girth or it's just it's like how do you navigate? As let's pause the volume. Oh, it's great because it's also captioned, right? So it's like there's a penis. So as your penis gets larger, you have less of a need to like compensate and everything. So here's your small guy, Maserati, right? And here's your super endowed guy, just walking. Right? This guy is walking like a hell of an amount of swagger. I mean, this guy. Right? Oh, and every woman is like, oh, geez. You know, that guy, you're like, why are you so happy? And he's like, just walking, right? Right? So that's a negative relationship. I'm not beyond being foolish so that you get it, right? This is a negative relationship. As one variable increases, the other variable decreases. Right? So to give you a more serious example, development and poverty. As society, like as Ghana develops, we expect poverty to decrease, right? So levels of development are really low. You have a lot of poverty in that country, right? That's worst country in the world. And then as you start to see higher developments, right, you start moving into the Scandinavian countries, right? High development, low poverty. Yeah? So the direction of a relationship, there's two kinds. There's positive or direct, negative or indirect or invert. So you're going to see me do a lot of this. That's the slope. And you're going to see me, look, the slope, the elbow is fixed. And there's directions, this. That's the movement of the elbow, right? So these are the three things that, these are the three parts of the statistical vocabulary that allows you to paint a picture, to characterize a relationship. You're going to tell me something about its precision via t-value. You're going to tell me something about its strength via coefficient estimate, and you're going to tell me its direction via the sign of the coefficient. Okay? So if you have a coefficient that is positive, then you have a direct or positive relationship. A positive relationship is one where as the independent variable goes up, the independent variable also goes up. An inverse relationship is one where as the independent variable goes up, dependent variable goes down. Question. Which one is better? Positive relationship or a negative relationship? Not, it doesn't depend on the metric. It depends on something else. It depends on the relation, on the subject. But that still doesn't answer my question. Which one is better? Is it better for you to have a positive relationship or a negative one? So here's the first time where it doesn't matter. So this is strictly a characterization piece of the language, meaning you're simply telling me that the relationship is, in fact, direct or inverse. Like, for example, the relationship between development and poverty is an inverse one. The more developed you are as a country, the less poverty you should see. That's better, right? I mean, we don't like poverty, right? So, you know, that's not a good or a bad thing. It's just the nature of the relationship. So this is the first time. With precision, the higher the t-value, the better. With the coefficient value, the higher the coefficient value, the better. Here, there's no better or worse. There's just direct and inverse. That's why I try to shy away from language that says this is a positive relationship, this is a negative relationship, because people tend to think, oh, it's a bad relationship, it's negative, right? It's not. That's why it's correct. That's correct and acceptable language in statistics. Most people say it's a positive relationship. I personally shy away simply because of that confusion that it can generate. So I say direct or inverse. Okay? These are the three things. Right? So the direction is simply about telling you if it's increase. So this is the direct. Again, like as I do silly things, right? This is your like airplane direct, right? One goes up, this one goes up, this one goes up. Direct. And this is your inverse. Yeah? That's going to help you remember. Inverse. No. Inverse. Whatever it's going to make you. Yeah? So we don't have an expectation of a better one, worse one. It's just a characterization tool. We good? So let's take a 5-minute break. All right, so we're going to do an exercise from beginning to end. So it's our first analysis, right? So what I need from you is to open your R. Once you open your R, I want you to load that XSplit, CrossSplit, XSplit shell, and load it so that you get the little menu that says 1, 2, 3. At this point, you should be familiar with that since you've done the vetting exercise. You should be able to do that straightforward. What I want you to do then is to go to Pilot. And on today's lecture, you download this data set, bidenOLS.csv, and you're going to save it somewhere you can find. So it's not any different than your vetting exercise. You're just going to upload the bidenOLS into R, right? So once you download this to your computer, you're going to go in the menu, and I think it's number 1. It says upload a data set, and then you're going to navigate. You're going to click on this, which you downloaded from Pilot. And then it's going to say successful, the data's been loaded. There are such and such variables. What else do you want to do? Once you get to that point, give you a minute to do that. Raise your hand if you're done loading. Okay, okay. Sheila, you good loading? Did you load it? Is everything good? Okay, so we're good? All right, so we always start with a prompt, right? A question, which is going to give us some type of relationship, and it's going to ask us to test it, right? So let's read this prompt, right? President Biden has shown interest in expanding Medicare for all Americans. That is not something that is supported by everyone, not by all Americans. Political pundits believe that wealthier Americans would be against it because it would mean higher taxes for them. So there's a story here of a relationship. Can somebody squeeze that relationship out for me? Luke, then I'll go back to you.
X would be wealth of individual. Y would be support of Medicare, and you're going to be looking.
Jump in.
I was gonna say the same thing, but I guess the correlation of not being against the higher taxes if you have a higher wealth.
Yes. So how different are you from him? What expectation do you have of the direction of the relationship?
It should be negative.
It should be negative, right? The more money you have, the less you support, right? Right. So what we have here is a story. So this is a big part of statistics, is like extracting the relationship. And there is no statistics, like there's no math. This is English. This is your experience as a researcher, right? As a practitioner. Is you're going to have to squeeze out a relationship here. What this is saying is that there is a relationship between wealth and support. The more money you make, the less you support, for obvious reasons. Those being, the more money you make, the more taxes you're going to have to pay, so that we can expand Medicare to everyone, right? And this, again, this should make a lot of sense to you, right? Rich people, what is the one thing they are against? Higher taxes, right? As more, as you move up in wealth, your tax bracket increases and increases and increases, right? Until it reaches the sky high level of 31%. Ooh, right. What's the average level in Europe? The average level in Europe is 39. What's the average, not the average, but, well, in Norway, if you make above $1 million, what's the tax rate? Give me a number, just guess.
50%.
50%,
I was paying in France 53%.
53%. So in Norway, everything you make above $1 million, the tax rate is 100%.
So what, they would give him back some money? He have to pay him whatever he got.
So if you make $1 million, if you make $2 million, your first $1 million gets taxed at a 70% rate. And then your second $1 million gets taxed at 100%. The government takes everything. Right? So 31% doesn't sound so bad, but that's not a political science question. If you ask me, I still will, if you ask me, having studied everything that they have to offer and everything, and the chances that you're gonna make $1 million a year, if you ask me, which tax system would you prefer in the United States? I would say hands down, without hesitating, I would say I would take the Norwegian tax rate, without a doubt. And I'm rich, because my wife is rich. I'm not rich, I'm a lowly professor, but my wife is. And I guess that makes me rich by association, and I will still take that because of all the benefits. But that's a class on taxes, not a class on statistics. So let's go back here. There's a story here of a relationship between tax and wealth. The more money you make, the more taxes you're going to have to pay. We don't like that. That's an American trait. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but Americans are particularly like unwilling, right? So there's a relationship there. But this is what the pundits are saying. Like, oh, you know, they're not going to support it. Well, there's a lot of wealthy people that support it, right? Bill Gates supports it. What's the other lady? The Mackenzie lady?
The wife
of
Jeff Bezos.
Of Jeff Bezos, right? She just donated
3 billion,
3 billion, something like that, right?
like over half of what she owns.
Oh no, she had,
I thought it was close to half of what she had.
she committed to donating half of what she owns by the time she dies. But she hasn't. But she has, yeah. I mean, because she has like $60 billion. Right, so, anyways, so that we need to test that. Is that relationship real? So we need to characterize this relationship using the language of statistics. So we need to say, you know, yes, this relationship between wealth and support for taxes is in fact true with a strength of blah, 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 with a magnitude, with a precision of blah, 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 and a direction positive or negative. So we're going to do that by loading that data onto R and running a linear regression. We don't need to talk too much about what a linear regression is quite yet. It will become important later. For now, we're just going to do that. So there should be an option for you to do that. I think it's option 3. We'll hit that. It should then ask you, it should give you a series of variables, then it should ask you which one is your independent variable or dependent variable. Yeah, Sheila. What do you think?
I'm having a problem even loading what I downloaded.
Okay, let me get some first. Did you load the data set first?
Yeah. That's good. Yes, that's right. That's how I.
Oh, no, I can look at this. That's a reason to. That's what happened. Thanks.
So it's your
I'm sorry. I downloaded first. Let me show you. I downloaded it. There's download. It will not give you the
Okay, so we loaded this. One, shoot.
So you type menu, you type menu.
Well, it should load them in.
Yeah.
Okay, so you should have seen, guys, it should be, once you load a data set, then you said you want to do a regression, then it tells you which, there are series of variables, which one is your, it asks you dependent or independent, so
Select your dependent.
select your dependent variable. So please, what's your dependent variable? So whatever the number for support is, you click there, click enter. What does it say next?
Select your.
Selecting in variables, press.
That's your income variable, is your independent variable, yeah?
So we choose number 2.
The next one.
Select your dependent variable. Any others? So did you get, then he says, any others, like anything else, right? We don't have anything else. In the future, there will be more. So right now, you press 0. And then it's going to spit out.
Would you like to add a question?
Okay, what does it ask you?
Would you like to add an interaction term, yes or no?
No. We're going to get to that in about 3 weeks. So
Oh, now we got a bunch of questions.
Okay. Okay. So you just, let me see. All right. So you get a table with all kinds of things. Okay. What we're interested in, remember, we're interested in 3 things. We're interested in the coefficient, in the t-value, and in the direction, right? So we're interested in the strength, precision, and direction of the relationship. So this entire table is with reference to your dependent variable, that being support. So we're interested in how the income variable relates to the support variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at that table. We're going to look for the income variable, and it's going to say coefficient on top. I don't have it on this computer because I can't install on this, so I can't give it to you. So I'll go to one of yours. Yes, so you see estimate, t-value. So look, we're interested in the relationship between income. So we're interested in this line. Yeah? The strength. T-value. What about the error? Right? Don't worry about the last one. So, what? Okay, so let's make sense of this table, guys. So, we are interested in 3 things. We're interested in the estimate. Remember the estimate? The estimate is going to give us the strength. And we're interested in the t-value. We're also interested in the direction of the relationship, but you get the direction of the relationship by looking at the sign of the estimate. So what is the estimate value for the income variable?
Negative, and it's really tiny, so it's crap, right?
Well, not yet. We're not off to a good start. But let's start with the beginning. So it's a negative value. What does that mean?
I mean, it's weak.
Diane says it means it's weak. Good. Negative value simply means an inverse relationship, right? So what expectation do we have for this relationship? We expected it to be negative, right? We expected it to be an inverse relationship because the more money you make, the less you support. So we're off to a good start in the sense of it seems to be correct. Like the relationship is in fact negative. Now, how strong is it? 0.07. Yeah, so not very strong, right? Now, granted, it's difficult for us to make sense of it because this is a very simple relationship and we don't have any reference. Like if we had two variables and one had a coefficient of 5 and the other one had a coefficient of 4, we could say this one's stronger than that. 5 is greater than 4, therefore 5 is greater than 3, therefore 5 is stronger. We don't have two, we only have one. So at this point, it's a less than satisfying analysis. But I don't want to confuse you with a multivariate relationship right now, so let's not worry about that. Right now, we do have a measure of strength. We can characterize this relationship. It is negative or it is inverse, and it has a strength of 0.0. Now, you might be going, I don't understand that. I don't know what that means. Yes, that's true, but every statistician would know what that means. Meaning, if you were to come in and say, look, this is what I have, the statistician would be like, Right? It's like when you go to Spain and you say, ¿Dónde está el baño? You don't know what that means, but they understand it. Right? So I know that you don't quite understand, but you are now speaking the language of statistics. You characterize the direction, I should say that, and you gave me a measure of strength, 0.7 something. Now give me a measure of precision. Negative 3.8 something. This negative sign, okay, is also the direction. So it doesn't carry any meaning other than telling you the direction. So what is the actual precision of this relationship? 3.82 something. So from what we talked about, the story of thresholds, how strong or how precise is this relationship? It's pretty precise. It's twice the level of political science, right? 1.96. It's actually 1 point above the most strict of thresholds, which is economics at 2.56. So it is a pretty precise relationship, right? So if somebody were to tell you, if your job was to take this and say, is this fear mongering, or is there truth to this claim over here? Like, what would you say? There is truth. It is a really precise relationship, even though it's not that big of it. It's not that strong of it. It's pretty precise, but it's not that strong. So the relationship exists, but it's not as they're saying, like, it's not as though a person making 50,000 is going like, yes! And a person making 80,000 is going, no! It's not that. It's more like a person making 50,000 is going, yes! And a person is making 80,000 is going like, probably not, but I'll take it. So it's a weak, as far as strength, it's pretty weak, even though it's pretty precise. And that's it. You just characterize, shorter than talking about the adjusted R square, which is a quantification of the explanatory power. We're just 3 out of 4 elements away from the complete complete language of statistics. Do we get it? Yeah.
Will the rest of these data follow the same format? I'm still gonna be looking at this second, not intercept.
The intercept you can ignore, okay? Since you're asking, okay, here's what the intercept is. I'll tell you just for the sake of you. It's gonna be a while before we pay any attention to the intercept. But the intercept is this. So we could have this relationship, and we can have another relationship that is like this. Meaning it's the same steepness, it's the same precision, and it's just sitting above, right? Parallel. So what does that mean for us? In statistics terms, it doesn't mean anything. You would characterize it the same way. You still tell me about the precision of it, you'd still tell me about the magnitude of it and the direction. It's just that it has a starting point. Here, the starting point is 20. That's the intercept. The other one would have an intercept of 35. It has a starting point that is higher, but it doesn't say anything about the relationship itself. Okay? So that's it. That's the complete, that's a complete characterization. Do another one. Isabella.
Is there any case where the t-value sign will be different?
No. Great question. Coefficient value will always, a coefficient sign will always match the t-value. As a matter of fact, some of you are like, what is this standard error thing? If you take the coefficient, you can do that right now if you want with the little calculator on your phone. You take the coefficient and you divide it by the standard error, see what you get. So take your coefficient, estimate. Take the estimate, divided by the standard error. What is it? T value. So the t value is a measure of precision. It is the product of dividing the coefficient by its own error. If you have a coefficient estimate and a large error, meaning a measure of just how wrong itself is, it's not going to be very precise, right? So that's what it is. The t value is nothing but the estimate divided by its own standard error.
Perspective of
So that's why you're always going to get a t-value that matches the coefficient, because if you take a negative number, the standard error is always positive, always, by definition. So if you take a negative number divided by positive, you get a negative number. Take a positive number divided by positive, you get a positive. Yes? So there you have it. Okay? And one more thing I want to. Okay, let's do another one. City of Dayton created a rideshare program that is meant to help with traffic and pollution levels. To get more people to adopt the program, the city is contemplating a billboard initiative that focuses on how much you can save, depending on how many days of the week you use it. Before the campaign starts, you are asked to analyze if people are in fact saving money. There's a lot being said here. I want you to extract a relationship out of this plane.
Is this the same one? Same file?
No, it's a different file. You're going to use ShareWriter. But before we load that and everything, I just want you to tell me what's the relationship here. Take a second to read it, and it's hidden in there.
Save Robert. Presentations, which one for-
It's Kalisha?
Yeah.
Yes. So let's, guys, let's see what Kalisha has to say.
Is it the amount of money you save depending on like how many days you use the service? So it's supposed to be a positive, well, it's supposed to be negative again, isn't it? Because the more, no, it's supposed to be positive, because the more days you do it, the more money you should save realistically.
Anybody else?
Dependent is how many days of the week and the saving. No, the
What?
savings are dependent
And they depend on what?
on the days, how many days you use.
So, I mean, from this, can you explain to me what the program is about?
About saving money,
Yeah, but how does it work?
um,
If you like, if you find somebody to ride with you to work, right, you don't, then they save money because they ride with you. The more days of the week they go with you, the less they have to spend on gas, the more they save. Yeah? It's a ride sharing program, right? Pretty straightforward. So there's a relationship here, right? And that relationship is the more you ride, the more, you know, if you do that every day of the week, you're gonna save a bunch of money on your gas bill.
Try it by yourself, because each spending full or greater number of days, right?
What do you mean?
So like if you only, okay, like for me, I work at home most of the time, right? So I don't drive
Then-
that much.
Well,
So
yeah,
if-
but it doesn't apply to you. Well, the relationship is not perfect. The relationship is between people that drive to work. You don't drive to work, it doesn't apply to you.
Okay.
Okay, so how would we go about doing this? Do we have any intuition?
you say go about doing it? Or-
Yeah, how would you test this?
I guess you would get a group of people and see how many days they did the ride share and then ask them how much money did they save.
Exactly. And then you have a data set, right? Then you vet the data set. Once you vetted it, you load it into the computer, right? And then you do like we did before. So I have that data set for you. I went out there and I asked a bunch of people. Did it everything like you're saying. So all you have to do is go to Pilot, download share rider OLS.csv, load it into R. Once it loads, press number 3 to do a regression. You're gonna get, you know, answer the tables. Which one is dependent variable? Which one is independent variable? Are you done? You know, anything else? Hit no. Do you want to add an interaction term? Hit no. And then you will give out that table. Once you're on that table, take a look at the column that says, not the column, the row that matches your variable, and look at the estimate value, look at the estimate sign, and look at the T coefficient value.
Share writer.
Share rider or less.
He's about to. And then Joe, like, why didn't you? Where's funny? The text about 2 weeks ago, you're still but today. He's busy. And John is maybe.
You like it.
Imagine. That's it. Should do.
Number, I haven't got there yet, so.
I think.
The coefficients for the days of the week for that estimate and the T value.
I'm not saying that you're wrong, I'm just saying.
So the estimate is 0.994.
Right. For the data.
Is 9.42. So that means that,
Now, we need to.
well, it's, first of all, it's a population.
That's part of the,
Correct.
And so, those relations shift, yeah.
I think it's 0.8 is It's less than.
Has to be above. Yes, sir.
Because you're gonna come back to that.
I think I bring that down.
I was. The T value is fine. So independent, so
The estimate is done, yes.
coefficient. No,
Coefficient is the estimate.
yeah. Okay. Is the same, it's just a bit more. And then the coefficient goes on.
Use the garage like half. Still about.
Down.
Let me here, you're gonna find that here now. So,
Describing it to
Just having that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so if it,
like, very strong.
okay. Guys, did we get a response table? Everybody, we're good? So, what we have here, you have a data set and it has two variables, days of the week and savings, right? We know that your savings are dependent on the days of the week. So your savings is your dependent variable and your days of the week is your independent variable, yes? So you're gonna run a regression. It's gonna ask you to select your dependent variable. You're gonna put savings, hit enter. It's gonna ask you what's your independent variable. You're gonna put days of the week, hit enter. And then it's gonna ask you if you're done selecting, you're gonna hit enter. Again, this is gonna be useful for us in the future. Right now, we just hit 0 and enter. Then it's gonna ask you if you have a direction term or an additive term. Again, this will be useful for us in the future. So you hit no. And then it spits out a table. Yes? That table is gonna have a row that says days of the week. And it's gonna have a coefficient that's gonna be like 0.9 something. Right, so what do we know from that off the bat? Positive. That's undeniable. Strong, well, it has a strength of 0.99. Again, it's difficult because we don't have a benchmark to compare it to, right? And again, that will become clearer as we move forward. In a couple of weeks, that will become painfully obvious to us. But right now, all we can do is characterize this relationship. It is positive. It has a strength of 0.99 something, right? And it has a precision level of what? 9 something. So pretty precise, right? I will tell you that in the real world, chances are you will never hit a 9. Okay? It's very unlikely that you will hit a 9. And here's the saddest part. If you do hit a 9, it's going to be for something really obvious. And it's not going to be interesting. Like if you find out, for example, that the relationship between, say, wealth and performance in school has a t-value of 9, like that news to you that rich people perform better in school when their parents perform better and their grandparents perform better. The grandparents donated money to that school and there's a, the classroom is named up. That's not, we all know that. So if you find something that has a t-value of 9, you're really not finding anything. It's like me telling you your grade is going to range from F to an A. It's like, I already knew that, right?
So what are the values that most likely we would see between what range?
You're going to be, these values are going to be somewhere between 1, right, which is below the threshold, and 3.5. That's in the real world. That's where you're most likely to see anything below 1 is it's just nature. There are things in nature that are correlated, like your height is correlated to your weight. That's just because when you grow, you weigh more. So there are certain things that are just there. And that's your 1s and your halves. The cause of stuff is really somewhere between 1.5 and above. And like I said, you're not really going to find anything above 3.5. Yeah.
Okay, so in that situation, if we hit a 3, that would be a strong.
Very good.
Like 2. What would that be?
A 2, well, see, the thing about the precision is that we do have a benchmark. That's your 1.96. So that's really what you have to worry about. Right? You're always thinking, oh, I got a 2, I'm above that threshold. Like, it's real. Like, it's real when it's above 1.96. You can say, hey, so like take this example, right? Before the campaign starts, you're asked to analyze if people are in fact saving money. Are they in fact saving money? In the language of statistics, the answer would be, because the t-value is about 1.96, people are saving money. It's real. They are saving money. Okay? You want to know how much money they're saving? I'll tell you this and I'll let you go. Give me a guess on how much money they're saving. Go look at this line and give me a guess.
They are saving 99 cents on each dollar.
They're saving 99 cents per day. It's the estimate. So the estimate is for every day. The impact is for every day that you ride, you save 99 cents. That's a different story, right? For somebody who doesn't have $1 to spend, it's not worth it. It's they will do that because they can then in 1 week they can save $5. In a month, that's $20, right? That's $20 is a tank of gas. So it depends. Like for me, perhaps I'll be like, no, in my Hummer Jeep that I have, I don't want anybody sitting next to me. I like listening to Joe Rogan and that nonsense, right? So
I would like to ask you, like, okay, for the tiredness here, we see 9.424. Okay. That's an exaggerated result because if you look deep in that relationship, you would see another variable that might participate in the problem.
you are complicating the story, and I just told you guys, we're going for a very simple relationship so that we can understand how this works, right? The reality is that there's more involved, right? If you're driving a Hummer Jeep like myself, where I get like, a mile per gallon, like I'll be saving a lot of money. right? Whereas if you drive a, what is it, what is that car?
Prius.
No, not a Prius.
Tesla.
If you drive a Tesla that gets like 900 miles per kilowatt, that means you're gonna save like 2 cents. So you have to account for what kind of car you're driving. So this is obviously a very incomplete analysis. But I didn't want to come here and have you like consider like, what's the distance? Like if you're commuting from here to Columbus, you're probably gonna save a lot more than if you're commuting from 3rd Street to 2nd Street. Correct. Right? None of that is accounted here. So, you're taking,
No, I'm talking about in general.
but before we get the generalities, we gotta get to this. We have to understand. So, there is homework, but we're gonna put a pause in it. I'll send an email. That way, we have more precision as to the due date and everything. We can also let you vote and everything. But I'll tell you what the homework is. The homework is this. You're gonna go slides 24, 5, 6, and 27. So there's 4 statistical analysis for you to do. And what you're gonna do is the same thing. You're gonna milk out the relationship. You're gonna load the respective data set. Go through, and then you're gonna characterize the relationship. You're gonna send me a page that says, okay, for the Kettering exercise, the relationship has a magnitude of blah, 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 strength of blah, blah, blah. It has a precision level of blah, blah, blah. It's in this direction. It did cross the threshold of 1.96. And consequently, it's a real relationship. Or it did not cross the threshold, or it's a negative value, and therefore the relationship is inverse. Right? There's oftentimes you will find out that you have an expectation that the relationship is real, but it's not it's not how you expect. So, for example, development and poverty, right? The more developed you are, the less poverty you're going to see. Right? Well, if you account for globalization, you see that globalization has a poverty effect. So you could become a more developed country in the sense that you're trading with the rest of the world, and that's all great, but you're actually observing poverty increase in your country. So in that case, the relationship is real, but it is actually direct. The more developed you are, the more poverty you see. That's counterintuitive. So that could be the case. So you want to kind of like check what your expectation is with what the results are. But that's what the homework is. Okay? Expect an email. Yes.
I have a question on last week's, that was Jim. So we can see what.
Yeah, well,
Vetting of the data.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to write you, when I grade it, I will put notes. This is good, this is bad, do this, don't do that. And then, if you're satisfied with those notes and it makes sense, great. If not, then you can get in touch with me and we'll either talk via office hours or email. I'm not going to sit here because every one of you has done a different concept. I'm not going to use an entire class to just talk about, her thing and then her thing and then her thing, because that would not be a good use of our time. Okay? So,